It's and we're recording. Good. So it's now 5:31. My name is Mike Remington with the Duval City Council. We're calling to order our Duval City Council Committee of the Whole for Tuesday, October 20th. This is a virtual meeting. I do see we have one attendee. We always want to welcome our citizens and happy to have you participate. Tonight, we have 5 specific items, and those are the State Auditor's Exit Conference. Item 2 is King County Proposition 1, Harborview Medical Center Health and Safety Improvement Bonds. Item 3 is our Public Works, Duval Design Standards. Item 4 is our biennial budget book overview. And then finally is our non-staff departments. This is a item which is part of the 2021-2022 budget, preliminary budget, and that will be presented by the Finance Department. So we'll get started with our good of the order. I've got a couple things to share. One is under consent items at our Mayor Pro Tem meeting last week with the Mayor and Director Thomas. We had discussed items that we might put on the consent agenda, and 2 of those items Council has already discussed. There seemed to be general approval from Council, and we thought to streamline things, we'd put it on consent. And those 2 items are an agenda bill to approve, authorize the mayor to sign interlocal agreement with the City of Redmond for dispatch services. We've used them for many years. They actually gave us what I think is a really good contract. They recognized because of COVID that they really held their price. The first year and the second year, I believe, there was a real modest increase. The second item was approve, or agenda bill was to approve and authorize the mayor to sign a contract amendment with John Galt for hearing examiner services. We don't have do our own court here, so we hire that out. And we've used John Galt for many years. And so it's what I would call a standard contract, and that would extend it through June 30th of 2021. So certainly if Council has any concerns, we can move those off for further discussion. So I'm just asking here, is there any Council members that would prefer to have one or both items removed? If you can just hold your hand up and then we'll do that. I don't see any concerns, so we'll leave those on there. I wanted to remind Council that a week from tomorrow, October 28th, we have a joint City Council Planning Commission meeting at 7 p.m. That will be a Zoom meeting. That should also be on your calendars. And then we also have a special workshop scheduled for Tuesday, October 27th at 5:30. That's a week from now. Mayor, have we confirmed that we'll hold that special workshop for Council? Most of those were budget workshop items.
Jody, please refresh what we discussed today in admin.
For next week's meeting?
For Tuesday, that was a special.
So right now it's just a council workshop with hopefully the remaining budget presentations from the various departments. And then depending on the outcome of tonight's meeting, potentially a special meeting for one item, but you guys will be discussing that later on tonight.
Great. Well, thank you. So if Council, just remember we've got those 2 meetings next week. Well, with that, I'll open it up to the rest of Council for good of the order. There anything Council members would like to share? Council Member Hogue.
So I really feel as we're heading into the budget season, I really feel, I mean, we're kind of in the middle of it anyways. I really feel like the council needs to spend the cow talking amongst ourselves about the budget. And it doesn't seem like there's any meetings set up for that. It sounds like the next cow is going to be presentations once again. But I don't know how we're going to accomplish talking amongst ourselves about the budget if we're going to have additional meetings or what, but we can't not do that. We have to talk to each other about it. So any ideas?
Well, thank you. The city has been working to clear presentations. Presentations that are here tonight, I approved, partly because things get so packed at council. But the point that you're making is one that many council members have made. It's a very compressed budget period that we have to really understand, discuss, and resolve any concerns on the budget. That's partially why we've added really a council workshop on the off weeks from council. And so I apologize that even tonight that we have a pretty full agenda, but your point is well made, and something that I'll on this Thursday's Mayor Pro Tem Mayor meeting, we'll certainly take a look at the schedule and make sure that we have ample time for council to be able to discuss this proposed budget. It really is key. Mayor?
Yeah, if council wants to have more meetings regarding the budget, we're happy to do it. So this is just right in general, the normal schedule and pretty consistent with what other cities do. So, it's a matter, I think part of it is a matter of, we've got a lot of business to get done in addition to the budget. So there is not enough time in general for the meeting times that we have. So even with the workshops, so if council wants more discussion time, I think we're going to need to look at starting some of those meetings earlier and having more dedication to that time.
Councilmember Hoag and then Councilmember Lingle.
Maybe the presentations can be moved to the council meeting so that we have ample time.
That's possible as well. I think, part of the challenge there too is how do we get our business done when we need to have presentations as well. I think the bottom line is that that council needs to be meeting for more often and more periods of time to go through the business. We can do that, but it's also going to be at the expense of other work getting done.
Michelle, thanks again. I do commit to really working hard to give us that discussion time. Your point, I think, is a sentiment from all council members. It's a top priority, and we need to have the time to be able to talk about our budget and not just see presentations. Councilmember Lingle.
Yeah, I just wanted to remind everyone that the Finance and Administration Committee is not meeting around the budget. We all made a joint decision, that the COW meetings would be the place that the budget was discussed in detail by the Committee of the Whole or Council of the Whole. So we are not looking, just to be sort of one of these disclaimers, we are not diving into the budget in Finance and Administration. And, we have not had meetings with staff because they were preparing the budget. So we don't have any additional information to share other than what's through the COW. And anyway, just a reminder that decision was made. And I think we have to structure our time accordingly. That the budget is the priority right now. So we have what, 6 weeks? 7 at the most?
Practically, we're about down to 45 days or so. Our city clerk, Jody Wyckoff, did you have input? I thought I saw your hand up.
Sorry, I lost my mouse for a minute. Yes, I was just going to remind council that we did pre-schedule extra meetings in November on the off Tuesdays, just in case we needed more time. So we already have them on our calendar. It would be easy enough to notice those. So that is also an option that we will be discussing on Thursday at the Mayor Pro Tem meeting, to start setting up some extra meetings for you guys to have those discussions.
Great. Jody, thank you. Other input from council members? Anything else for the good of the order? Councilmember Iyer.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, in that kind of same vein, I have a couple items that I wanted to bring up. But at first, so Sally Clark, the same Sally Clark from Seattle, City of Seattle Council?
Yes, depending on what you think about that, yes.
That's really exciting. I lived in North Seattle where you were my council member, and at the time, I don't think I had an appreciation for how big of a job that was. And I can't imagine what it takes to do that. So thank you for your service on that. Okay, so I got two things that I wanted to go over real quick that I haven't had a chance to get out to the council. The first one's regarding it's related to Agenda Bill AB 2093A, Transportation Improvement Board, Puget Sound Energy, the light conversion, and that's it's been a running project since 2017, and it first came about, was passed in 2017. And, in that agenda bill, we outlined that, a field report would identify the number of lights and wattage, to be updated. Sounds like, and they sounds like the estimation at that point was a little lower than what it ended up being, quite a bit. But so at some point in that process, there were several neighborhoods that slipped through the cracks. And I think it's a good thing that what I'm looking for is to have that conversation with council to seek to have those lights added back into the next budget cycle to address the issue. And it's represents a cost savings for the city, but it's also in terms of the transition from those lights to LED. But really what it comes down to is some of these old, the original style of fixture is not an ideal setup for R8 housing, or even really any neighborhood, because it casts light in all directions, and it's not conducive to like a nice neighborhood. And so I'm going to share my screen real quick if I can. This is an experiment. So let's see. So this is just a picture of down along on First Street. These lights are approximately 8 feet away from the structure, and on the side of the building, they're approximately 6 feet away from the structure. You can't see those; those are down Bird Street. So these in some of these higher density neighborhoods, they're very close to the homes, and these lights have been here since 2007. So they've been in place. So I'm not sure what happened and how that they were overlooked in that inventory, but they weren't included. And then, so here's another picture. This one is approximately 15 feet away from the house. And you can see the kind of complete directional nature of these lights make them, pretty intense. And this goes back to 2018. I remember when we did the presentation, Director Boyd did the presentation on this, and I expressed my excitement for this transition, because the new lights are LED and directional. And I distinctly remember, because I think I made Director Boyd uncomfortable, because I told him I was falling in love with him because he was going to change these lights out. And so this is a picture looking down Third at a new development that has the new fixtures. And unfortunately for me, this morning we had a nice fog at 5 in the morning, and we got a good picture showing that the direction of the light really, it casts the light down to the street, and it just improves the streetscape, and is really a more appropriate light for the R8 density, or even the higher density, where you get the houses very close to the road.
Matt, did you switch to a different picture, because it's still sharing your email screen?
Yeah, I think we're looking at the original photo, Matt.
Okay, let's see. I guess I got to do one at a time. Here we go. Sorry. Stop sharing. Okay, I'll try to do one more. There you go. Okay, so this is a picture looking down Third into the Toll Brothers neighborhood. So you get a nice picture of what the new directional lights look like, and that's the basic gist. Steve provided me with a couple neighborhoods that they believe that were did not make that transition over with these globe style lights. And I went out, and there were 4 neighborhoods listed. Of those 4, one of them actually was included in the changeover, and they did have the updated lights. And then the other 3 were a total of approximately 16 lights, 16 of these globe lights, and all these neighborhoods date back to the 2007 kind of calamity where everything froze in time for, 5-6 years. And maybe that had something to do with the inventory, not being accounted for. So total, it's about 16 lights. And I think we should also look, there's some other of these style globe lights that I think that occurred before the standard was changed, and they're LED, but they're the circular globe lights, and they're very close to homes. And the example of that is 3rd Avenue and 3rd Circle Northeast, the new neighborhood off of 143rd, I believe, where they have these globe lights. Here, bear with me. And I'm sorry, I know this takes up a lot of time, but this is an important issue to neighborhoods. So
Matt, was Fox Hollow one of the neighborhoods? I know some people who've just been super aggravated because it's the big globe style lamppost and the light just shines straight into the windows. Fox Hollow, that was a huge
neighborhood. Some of the neighborhood names I have are, I think, what was on the plat, so it's not necessarily what it ended up being at the end. And like Steve did indicate that there is kind of we're not totally 100% sure on the PUD doesn't keep a great inventory of the lights, but what we thought hadn't been changed over was somewhat limited.
Mike, I think the light pollution issue has been something that we've heard about, which is one reason we approved really doing that changeover with PSC. It appears from what you're saying and documenting with the photos that there are obviously some that are missed. Do you have a proposed solution? Do we have a path forward?
Well, I think what I'm looking at is to get buy off on council in terms of, or consideration by council of the general idea of looking at this in terms of adding it to this current existing budget, and so we can get that changeover. It's something that my understanding is that PUD can do the work. It's just a matter of finding the funds, because the grant allocation sounds like it's not. We're uncertain about the upcoming grant. So this specific grant allocation is uncertain, and therefore it would be up to the city to identify those funds and make those changes. And mostly my point with the photos is just saying, this is something that these are all something that was here. I feel like, we should have caught it, but it's not really it's water in the bridge at this point, and it's really just an issue I think the neighborhoods would really benefit from. And, so I would like to bring another point to council at some point.
Yeah, so it sounds like this would be a council decision to add it to the budget. I see Mayor Okerlander has input. Thank you.
Yeah. And Steve can fill in here more, but specifically one of those neighborhoods for sure, it's the responsibility of the developer to turn the lights over to the city. And so if they haven't done that, that is an easy way for those things to get missed. I think that Mr. Laniszewski, when he gets back to his desk, should pipe in a little bit, because this, lighting throughout the city is a priority. However, doing it without grant funding or in conjunction with other projects can make it much more expensive. I've lived in the same neighborhood for almost 20 years, and we still have areas of the neighborhood that are not lighted. And it's been a matter of cost. And so Steve can answer more to what the possibilities are for grant opportunities, but most of the major projects that we do in the city are supplemented by grants. I would be a little bit concerned spending a lot of capital money simply changing out lights versus waiting for the grants when the most important thing that the community has is lights and safety, particularly when we have a lot of areas that don't have coverage at all. So Mr. Laniszewski, I'd love to hear.
Just real quick in response, I appreciate that perspective, and I really, definitely, I hear you and understand that perspective. And my purpose of bringing it to council was to, to share it in this forum and to bring it to the council members as what I think is a valuable and worthwhile expenditure. And with the number of lights in these neighborhoods that are dense and the higher number of homes in these neighborhoods, I think it was very much a shortfall of the city in missing these, because whether it was at the point of project closeout, those are checklists that the city works with developers to oversee. And then at the second point of the 2018 inventory, I'm not sure why it wasn't included there, or why it wasn't brought up then. I brought it up in council. So anyway, please, Steve.
Matt, thank you. I don't know that we'll solve that tonight. I think it's a key issue for us. Steve, ideally, what I'd like to do, instead of continuing discussion tonight, we've got several other items, but this is really important to us. I'd love to bring it back as an item, either during the budget when we're discussing public works, or as a separate item. I think one of the things we heard in our recent citizen survey, why they felt unsafe walking at night, had to do lack of sidewalks and lighting. I think both these points, there's areas that aren't lit that we need to consider, and those that are lit, I think we need to consider the conversion. I think we need to have a little longer discussion, take a look at cost, benefit, and options, and then allow council to have a specific discussion. Are you okay with that, Matt, if we move on tonight?
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You mentioned you had one other item. I didn't want to cut you short.
No, I'm passionate about lights. I'm sorry for going long. I know we have a lot of stuff. The only other item that I had was the article that I picked up this weekend on Seattle Times regarding King County sales tax for their homeless housing plans. They were supposed to have it in place September 30th, and then with the not getting that done, is presented some options for cities to enact their own sales tax. I haven't researched it a whole bunch. North Bend sounds like they they're putting in place, if they've not done it already, their own sales tax for that, with the idea that maintaining some local seat at the table. I just thought it seemed like something that council could discuss.
I think it's another good item. Thank you for both sending out the article. I think it was well written, and I think it's a great topic for us to discuss, especially when you're looking at opportunities for low-income housing.
And can I ask Councilmember Iyer to send that to administration, because I did not receive a copy of that article, please? Thank you.
That'd be great. Matt, is that all right?
Well, right away, my phone just died, so I'll try to get charged and send it over. ASAP.
Thank you, Matt. Well, if council, if there isn't any other good of the order, I'll move on to our first item. Item 1 is our state auditor exit conference, and we're welcoming Wendy Choi, and if I don't miss it, Clay Trushinsky. Did I get it right, Clay?
Perfect.
Oh, thank you. I'll turn it over to both of you. Thank you for both assisting us with going through the audit, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Awesome. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Can everyone, I'm going to be sharing my screen here. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
All right. Well, Wendy, I'll hand it over to you to start with introductions.
All right, well, great. Thank you for having us here this evening. I am Wendy Choi, the audit manager, and Clay Trushinsky, who was the auditor in charge and also the assistant audit manager for the engagement. It's nice for us to be out here each year and just be able to have some FaceTime with each of you to go over our annual audit for the city of Duval. In front of you is the exit conference agenda, with the biggest thing, with the Office of the Washington State Auditor is that increased trust in government. We're here to provide citizens with that independent and transparent examinations of state and local governments, and also as an added level of assurance for the city and your community that city's controls are in compliance with state laws, regulations, and you're accountable for public resources. So this evening, we are here to share the results of the 2019 audit. And so what I'd like to do is actually hand it off to Clay, who will go over the report.
Awesome. Thank you, Wendy. We always like to just start off with audit highlights. Going through the audit process is a long process that requires a lot of information and input, especially from from city management. So we just want to thank Dana as well as Trish and the rest of the management team for providing us timely responses to our audit requests. I know this is a really busy time for the city as you're going through your budget process. So I just really appreciate all the requests and everything that you did to prioritize us, and I appreciate that. And I know we have a really good working relationship with the city, and so I always like to touch on that. And that's something that we're always really happy to have with the city. So thank you so much for that. And with that, we're going to go into our audit report. So our first audit report is the accountability audit report. And I'm just going to go ahead and switch to page 4, which talks about the results in brief. So as we go through our accountability audits, we're doing a bunch of different procedures. We're talking with management as well as council, doing risk assessments, reading through your meeting minutes, trending your expenditures, your revenues, looking at statewide trends as well. And then we ultimately boil it down into a couple areas that we feel provide the most benefit for the city. And so those areas you can see at the bottom of our screen that we looked at this year that our risk took us towards was financial condition. We're actually looking at that for all of our governments across the state of Washington this year with COVID-19 impacts. We looked at contracts and agreement review. We also looked at electronic fund transfers. That's a really hot topic right now, especially in a remote environment. We're seeing a lot of fraudsters trying to take advantage of this remote environment. And unfortunately, sometimes they're successful with that. So we're really trying to just get the word out there and build as much awareness as possible. And then we looked at payroll, overtime, stipends, as well as leave balances. And then finally, we followed up on the small and attractive assets, looking at any sort of small and attractive assets that we consider to be like computers or anything that could potentially, like what we like to say is grow legs and potentially walk away from the city. So those are the areas we looked at. And then the accountability audit, we're focused on compliance with state laws as well as local policy. And so as you can see at the top here, this highlighted sentence that I have, the city complied with all material respects to your state laws and regulations, as well as your own policies. So that's your good, clean audit opinion for your accountability audit. So that's exactly what we want to see. At this time, is there any questions that we have? Any questions that you have for me that I can answer? All right, and if you have any questions along the way, feel free to just shout them out and I'll definitely be happy to answer those for you. And I'll just quickly go through the rest of this report. The accountability report references our financial report, which we'll go over in just a minute. And then we just have some additional information about the city that we talked to management about, and they've updated this. And so it just gives a brief update of what's going on in the city for 2019. And we'll go ahead and go to our financial statement audit reports. So in the audit report, as we scroll down here, again, page 4, this first report is our report on internal controls. So we don't provide an opinion on internal controls, but one thing that governmental auditing standards require us to do is to evaluate controls and report on any deficiencies that we identify. And during our audit, we didn't identify any deficiencies that would rise to a reportable issue. So that's just that first highlight here. So that's exactly what we want to see, good, clean controls. And then another thing that governmental auditing standards require us to report on is any sort of material noncompliance with laws, regulations, grants, or contracts. And this second paragraph here just says that we didn't identify any instances of noncompliance. So exactly what we want to see there as well. And then this next report we have here, this is where we actually say our opinion on the financial statements. And we scroll down a little bit here. So the city prepares on the regulatory basis, or they prepare cash basis statements. So in our opinion, those cash basis statements fairly present in all material respects the cash investments for the city and the changes in cash investment for the year end. So essentially that is a good, clean audit opinion, unmodified opinion, exactly what we want to see for our regulatory basis of accounting. And then one thing that governmental auditing standards just require us to report, and you'll see this adverse opinion on all cash basis districts and cities. We just have to report on your compliance with US GAAP. And since you report on the regulatory basis, which is absolutely allowable, and a lot of our cities across the state of Washington and counties do, we just have to report on that. And that's not the intent of the statements that you prepare and offer up for audit. So we just have those paragraphs in there that there is an adverse opinion on US GAAP, but overall good, clean opinion on the regulatory cash basis. So exactly what we want to see. That's what bond ratings care about. And then below this, we have a matter of emphasis paragraph related to COVID-19 and just the uncertainties and potential financial impacts that may have in the coming years. And we're actually putting that in all of our audit reports related to COVID-19. And then the next paragraph we have is related to the schedule of long-term liabilities. So this is your supplemental information. And we give an opinion in relation to the financial statements as a whole. And we can see here, fairly stated in all material respects. So again, a good, clean audit opinion on that schedule of long-term liabilities. And that's your financial statement report. And then when this publishes on our website, we'll have all the attached financial statements that go along with this report. But in brief, good, clean financial statement report, clean accountability audit report. So exactly what we want to be seeing. Is there any questions? I'll just go back to the agenda. I have a couple required information to go through, but just open it up right now if there's any questions that council may have.
Council members, any questions? Clay, I don't see. Oh, Councilmember Hoag.
So I'm just kind of curious how you thought that our city is holding up during this COVID, and how, it feels like because we don't rely heavily on sales tax that we're doing pretty good with that. But I just wanted to know how you feel that we compare.
Yeah. Wendy, sorry, I didn't know if I cut you off there.
No, go ahead if you like to.
Yeah. So you made a great point, Councilmember Hoag. Sales tax, our cities that are very sales tax dependent or sales tax heavy are feeling a pretty big hit from this. The city of Duval luckily doesn't rely too heavily on sales tax, so not as much of a hit. I don't want to discount the struggles that any city or municipality is feeling during this because everyone has some sort of struggle that's going on. But our cities that are primarily property tax focused are faring a little bit better than our sales tax heavy cities. And then one thing that we do when we're looking at financial condition is we're running accounting ratios. And that's one thing that keys us off to any potential issues that the city might run into. And so we're looking at, one of our biggest ones we're looking at is days of cash on hand for operating and how long you're able to continue operations, essentially if all revenue streams cut off. Yeah, good, but great question. Wendy, did you want to add anything on that?
No, I think just the only other piece is that I think, because this annual audit is as of fiscal year 2019, I think when we come in for the 2020 audit, that is really when we're going to see the potential impacts or actual effects from like a citywide standpoint. But I think, Clay was accurate in that sense of definitely our clients that have less of a sales tax base, there can be some benefits behind that. But as a reporting agency, since we won't be here till really the 2021 auditing 2020, I think that's when we'll really see the actual effects, right? Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Clay. Any other questions? Councilmember Langle.
I'd like a copy of the management letter, please.
So as for this, I'll go through the rest of the communication. We actually don't have an audit management letter this year. This portion that you're seeing down here, the status of the prior ML, is related to fiscal year 2018. And you see it's partially resolved. And the reason it's marked as partially resolved is that we reissued that as a housekeeping item. Since the majority of that management letter from our perspective was focused on not having a policy passed, and the city has since passed a policy. And so we felt that that was at a point to move to more of a housekeeping type audit recommendation that will follow up in the fiscal 20 year, the next fiscal audit.
And then what we'll do as part of small and attractive assets, it's actually taking, there's a couple of perspectives with small and attractive asset testing. So one of them is actually taking the city's prepared small and attractive asset listing and tracing assets from that list to its physical location, tracing and then category number 2 is tracing actual assets we may observe on site to the asset listing. And then the third component of a small and attractive asset test is also taking if there were any new purchases from our vendor analysis, taking some of those new items that may fit the city's definition of small and attractive and tracing that to its physical location and the asset listing. So a couple of components, partially resolved, as Clay mentioned, since it was policy piece. We also do recognize the sensitivity with our current situation with the pandemic. Really being on site and be able to inspect assets wasn't as feasible for this audit period. So the biggest thing, since it was policy piece, we wanted to make sure the city was in that right path for the policy. And then next year we'll be able to really do some testing and hopefully come on site in some way, be able to look at the assets. But we can get you a copy of the prior management letter if you'd like.
I guess I'm confused because last year we went over that level of information. Obviously, you're in a draft document status right now. So, but in a prior year, I actually asked for a copy of the audit, and I went to the auditor's office, and they told me to go to the finance department, which at that time we didn't have a finance department. So I just want to make, I don't have any financials to look at right now, and last year we all have acknowledged was a very difficult year for reporting. So I just want to make sure that I have full documentation of the audit.
Absolutely. If there's anything, whatever way works best, our contact information is at the end of the agenda. Our email address is there as well. So you can contact myself, or you can also, Dana Mason was our audit liaison. There's definitely some options, and we can get you the information that you would need. Absolutely.
Any other questions? Kind of go through the recommendation piece here in just a minute. But any other questions from council?
Council member.
Yes. If there's any documents that are provided to one council member, could it be provided to all of council?
Yeah, I think what might work best is, I just kind of thinking right off the top of my head, is if council is comfortable with this, and the mayor, is that we could work directly with our liaison. That's kind of that liaison auditor role that we have, just to ensure that the communication is consistent. And then that way, when we pass on to the liaison, they can be able to follow the appropriate protocol to then pass it on to the governing body. If that's preferably my first option, is, we can work directly with our liaison, get you the information. That way, Dana, as a representative of the city from the audit standpoint, can then be able to make sure it gets disseminated in a consistent manner.
That sounds great to me. So
Okay.
if the Councilmember Lango coordinates to get information through that liaison, I guess I would request that of our administrative team, that all of council would receive those, whatever documents or responses. That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to do with all council, substantive council questions, is making sure that everybody gets the same answer at the same time.
That would be great. That would actually make me feel better too, is if that way, you know, we have Dana as our audit liaison, just kind of to keep it consistent. So if it's okay, I mean, you all can talk offline or after we're done with our presentation, but whatever you may need from our agency, if maybe Dana can be my point of contact and I can pass it along. Absolutely.
I think all the council feels more than comfortable with Dana being able to be the person to take that and pass it on to everyone in council as well as city staff. So thank you, Wendy.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question.
Well, Clay, I'll turn it back over to you for wrapping it up here.
All right. So recommendations not included in the audit report. This year, we didn't have any recommendations included or referenced in the audit reports. We do have exit item recommendations, which are essentially housekeeping type audit recommendations, our lowest level of reporting. Those aren't referenced or included in the audit report. It's not our intent to go through those tonight. And then we do have just the status of that prior year management letter that we touched on, and that was reissued as a housekeeping or exit item level, a lower level of reporting. So good news on that. We're liking to see, good to see progress moving forward on the resolution of prior issues. So that's always something we like to highlight there. And then communication, just some required communication. There was no uncorrected misstatements, no material uncorrected, sorry, skipped a bullet here. We do have one uncorrected misstatement in the audited financial statements, and that was just related to a timing issue with a credit card payment for year-end cash. And that is included in the management representation letter that we go through here. That we provide to management, which essentially is just a good faith attestation that you gave us what we asked for and you didn't withhold any information. And we include just a copy of this uncorrected error that we have in the management representation letter, but immaterial to the fair presentation of financial statements. So just very, very minor. And then there was no material misstatements in the financial statements that were corrected by management. All right, and this time I'll give it back over to Wendy.
Great, thank you, Clay. And I apologize, it's a little dark in this room. I didn't realize how quickly it gets dark now. So I will just conclude real quickly with some finalizing your audit. So both of the reports that we shared this evening are in the draft form, but they're clean reports exactly with the opinions that you want to see. Audit reports are issued Mondays and Thursdays. So Dana, as our audit liaison, would get a 2-day email notification prior to when these reports are released on our website. So if it works, maybe I can just check in with Dana today being Tuesday, probably Thursday, and just make sure that we have the okay if council and the mayor need some more time to look at the draft reports. I could check in with Dana on Thursday and the report can be released as early as Monday. The management representation letter is just what Clay went over a moment ago, and it's just required by audit standards for us to get that signed letter, and it's just exactly good faith that the city was responsive and cooperative with our requests. At the beginning of the audit, we estimated the cost to be about $25,900, and actual costs will approximate that amount. The next scheduled audit is in typically fall, fourth quarter of 2021, and we'll come in and perform a 2020 audit for accountability for public resources and financial statements. The next scheduled audit is the same cost as what we had quoted this year, plus travel expenses, kind of just not knowing what the upcoming year will look like from an audit standpoint. One thing is we really performed most of this audit remotely. So just thank you to your team for that great cooperative spirit together. So we'll just be in close touch with Dana as our liaison as we get closer to next year, see if we're back on site at City Hall or whatnot. So we just have a friendly reminder though, that if you do have federal expenditures that are $750,000 or more in any given year, to please notify our office, because then the city would be subject to a federal grant compliance audit, which actually has a September 30th deadline. So that would mean we would need to be in closer to the summertime of 2021 instead of the fall. And just working together to improve government. Once the reports are issued, a customer service survey an audit survey will come out. So just any feedback you have, we greatly appreciate it. Things that are working well that you want us to keep doing, things that maybe you'd like us to consider trying differently in the upcoming year, we want to be able to have that feedback. And two quick resources that our agency does have is a local government support team. They're great to provide technical assistance, especially during annual online filing, as well as the help desk. Great resource that if the city does have questions, sometimes there's certain guidance that our team can't provide as Team North King County, because we are the auditors here to provide the opinion for the city. So our local government support team can be a great asset in those situations. Also, the Center for Government Innovation. We do have the center, which offers a lot of services to our local governments that's free. Included is, lean type projects, as well as free training videos, and even our resource database, which is great. We do a lot of outreach as an agency for different associations and trainings that we provide. The Resource Center there has a lot of great resources that you can search by keywords, being able to download those resources as a PDF file and share it with your fellow team members. Really hot topics in there right now, a lot of cybersecurity resources that are helpful, segregation of duty guides, helpful at any size, whether you're a small local government or a larger one. So just really encourage you to take some time and check out our resources. And then just lastly, under questions, are the key contact information for each of us. So, we're all working remotely right now, so email is probably the best way to reach us. But we're just here. If there's any questions after this evening's presentation, just feel free to reach out to us. Any questions?
I don't see any hands up.
Okay.
Well, Mayor Okerlander.
I just wanted to thank Wendy and Clay from the auditor's office. This is the third year in a row I've had the opportunity to work with them. And it's not uncommon for us to call the auditor's office through the year to get advice and make sure we're on the right track with things. And they're extraordinarily helpful. And I think they really, with the state auditor's office, really do work to help improve government processes and efficiencies. And while it's a lot of work for our staff, I'm very thankful each year for the opportunity we have to look at how we're doing things and making sure we're on the right track as far as audit standards go. So thank you so much for all of your efforts as always.
Yes, thank you. And we really appreciate the city and the team that you have. This year especially, performed most of this audit remotely, if not all of it. So that was new to all of us involved, and it went well. So thank you.
Well, Wendy and Clay, I want to thank you as well on behalf of our city council. We're real proud of our finance department and Director Mason. This has been a happier year for us. In 2019, it was a little bit rough without a finance director and some of the reports available, but we have a lot of good things going on. And appreciate the report that you provided, the honesty up front, things that we can do to improve and make sure we're safeguarding our citizens' monies. So thank you so much, and have a safe evening.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Okay, take care now.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Well, our next item is our King County Proposition 1 Harborview Medical Center Health and Safety Improvement Bonds, which will be on the ballot. I did not have the presenter here, but Sally Clark, I think, are you the presenter for this tonight?
I am indeed your presenter for tonight. I'm your guest presenter.
Well, Sally, thank you. It really is a pleasure to have you here with both your background and I will say I went through my paramedic training at Harborview Medical Center through the University of Washington School of Medicine. It's one of the most impressive programs, watching the work that's done at Harborview. They are our level 1 trauma center for the region. It includes the state of Alaska, Idaho, and Montana. They are the burn center for the region as well. And I can tell you without a doubt, I've watched them save lives. The presentation tonight is more factual to be able to go over what this bond is about. Because every ballot, there's choices. I will ask any of our attendees if someone has an opposing view on it. They're welcome to share that. I'll do that after Sally's presentation. I believe on the ballot, there was no one that actually came forward to have an opposing view, but I will ask here, make sure that we are always balanced. So Sally, with that, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you again.
I don't know, Councilmember, you just did a great job. I'm not sure I should add anything. I should probably just stop while I'm ahead. So for those of you who I haven't met before, my name is Sally Clark. I work currently at the University of Washington. I know a few of you from my previous life at Seattle City Council. I know Councilmember Langell from a couple of lives before that, and her good works in the city of Seattle, particularly Southeast Seattle. I work now, as I said, at the university as what's called the Director of the Office of Regional and Community Relations. I'm actually here tonight, though, off those hours because, as the council member referenced, this is a ballot measure. And so I'm part of a group that has been working off hours on this ballot measure moving forward. And so just to be clear, I'm not technically representing the university while I'm here tonight. I do have a brief PowerPoint that I'll go through. I do want to thank you for the time, though. I know you've, you know, city council meetings, I have a soft spot for this. So I've loved listening to what you're working on. Streetlights in particular was great. And I'm going to run through just a few things pretty high level. And again, this is informational, not asking you to take any position or to make any statements about the ballot measure here tonight. This is really part of outreach because Harborview is the Regional Trauma Center, the public hospital for all of King County. And so this is just us out trying to make sure that we let as many people as possible know about this. This is that time of year. And so you all are civically involved, you know about Harborview. This presentation that I'll share with you is pretty high level, not knowing whether would have visitors tonight or anybody viewing this later on. And so I'll call up the presentation here, but you know, as referenced, it is the Regional Trauma Center for multiple states for the 5-state area. And for those of you who've been in the region for a long time, you kind of know the cycle. It is the public hospital. That means that we come out about every 20 years or so, needing to make some major investments in this backbone to the emergency response world. And if you or your family have ever had to rely on Harborview, the burn center, any kind of trauma response, life flight, any of the kinds of surgical, and then certainly during COVID now, it is one of the hubs for the major regional response to COVID and treatment of patients who are suffering from COVID and need to be treated in hospital. So just the basics. Owned by King County and operated by the University of Washington, proudly. University of Washington Medicine has more than 400 beds. That'll be roughly the same. They're just going to be redistributed in order to be more smartly managed after this investment, if voters say yes. In the last year where we were able to do some audited numbers, you just did your audits. We haven't confirmed the 2019 year yet, so these are 2018 numbers. 260,000 outpatients, 57,000 ER visits, and you see the number of patient contacts. For anyone who is not aware, you'll see a photograph in a moment. It's in Seattle's First Hill neighborhood, again, orienting for anybody who might be seeing this later on or was visiting tonight. It is also one of the hospitals that treats anybody who needs help, anybody who walks in. And so that means that there is a tremendous amount of what's called uncompensated care. That could be charity care, that could be simply uncompensated care, $83.7 million in a year. We've already mentioned that it's the region's level 1 adult and pediatric trauma and burn center. And then just to reiterate, I mean, mission-based. This is a hospital that is there because we, the people of King County, make sure that it is there. That's your basic, I don't know if that's a drone this time or if that's a real helicopter. It seems everything is drone now, but that's your basic kind of upper real estate shot now of the Harborview campus as you see it from the air and from the I-5 area through that corridor. So there was a committee that was brought together almost 2 years ago now to take a look at the needs of Harborview. That was convened by King County. that had medical professionals on it. It had county staff folks on it. It had folks from outside the county as well, some experts in emergency response. And so they prioritized, and what do we have here tonight? We have 6 bullet points here tonight. You will not be surprised to know that the original list of what was needed at Harborview was 30 bullets of what would we do if we could, what would we do if we were unconstrained. And that was really distilled down, and there was a lot of compromising from folks who really care passionately about their particular piece of what's important in the Harborview mission. But in general, the idea is to be able to increase Harborview's ability to respond. That's through surge and emergency department capacity. Especially with COVID, we know that we need to better address at Harborview and at all hospitals, but Harborview in this case, modern infection control. That means being able to separate people. That means the HVAC units. That means everything that we're reading about in terms of not just PPE, but also how we actually structure spaces to be safe for both the patients, but also the healthcare personnel who we rely on to be there regularly. Behavioral health services are clearly a critical part of the conversation that we're having, both about healthy communities in general and the rising understanding of what behavioral health medicine can be, but also with all of the regional conversations about homelessness and the critical nature of behavioral health services in getting at what are some of the barriers to long-term success with housing. And then because of where we live, clearly seismic upgrades to the existing buildings for the patient and employee safety. In general, after crunching everything together, it is a 20-year measure that's before people in Prop 1, and it tallies about $1.74 billion. And the previous bond was 20 years ago. So these are the ways that the bond would address those things. There would be a new medical tower plus renovation of existing space. And there would be some dividing up of some of the patient spaces so that you'd be able to isolate patients in individual rooms, which is something that is very difficult. They're finding very difficult to do now with particularly the surges as they come of folks who need isolated rooms as they are either exposed to COVID or have actually developed symptoms from COVID. Expansion of the emergency department. With more people in the county, the visit rate has gone up, and just having more space so that we're not boarding patients in the hallways, not stacking patients in small spaces that make it very difficult to carry out treatments in those spaces. And then there will be construction of a new behavioral health services building. This is a joint priority with the state and with the county and the University of Washington. This will be a behavioral health institute. And it will have, if you think of it, the Behavioral Health Institute will be a lot of research, and it'll be primarily outpatient services. There will be a new behavioral health teaching hospital at UW Northwest, and that will actually be more of an inpatient facility. And so you will definitely encounter some UW doctors who don't like me reducing it to those two things. But as I explain it to folks, those are the basic main differences. And there will be some things about involuntary treatment courts that are connected with both the expansion of space in the medical tower, but also the behavioral health teaching, the Behavioral Health Institute as well. There will be some other improvements around the campus. There were some commitments made back in the previous bond around open space and commitments to the First Hill community that were never carried out. And the desire here is to actually carry those out in this new bond proposal as well. Overall, the calculation is that if you use the median price of a $600,000 home, you're looking at approximately $75 annually. You'll see there was an article in the paper recently. This is an increase. It's an increase. The current Harborview bond, if you priced it out by the end of it, would be about $13 a year. That's towards the end of it. These, go up at the beginning and down depending on the spending plan. A few patient comments. These won't be surprising to anybody who has been reading the news about Harborview or about other crowding issues associated with the Harborview campus. People generally give very high marks to the service the care that they receive at Harborview, but there are some issues about the facilities and about how crowded and congested the facilities are. And we don't want to give people the idea that compromises their care in some way, but it may compromise how they feel about the care that they're receiving, and that can be as important. And so again, highlighting there'd be the new medical tower, the expanded emergency department, new behavioral health services building, the seismic improvements. And then there would be 150 what we're calling respite beds in Harborview Hall. Harborview Hall is the former, some of you will know the history of this, but it's the older building on the east side of the campus, and it was the former essentially nursing housing way back in the day. And there would be renovation at Harborview Hall in order to have 150 respite beds. This would be for patients who come to Harborview because they need help, but they are homeless or unstably housed, and they don't have a safe place to be discharged to. And we see awful examples sometimes in this region, but some really high profile cases in other parts of the country where people have unfortunately been discharged to the streets. And not surprisingly, that's not a way to keep people healthy. It's not a way to keep people safe. So 150 respite beds would be a big increase in the system and would be of use to all hospitals in the area in terms of how we coordinate respite care. I'm going to stop right there. I said I would try to keep it short. I'm happy to try to answer any questions tonight. And overall, again, I just want to thank you for the time and the opportunity to talk tonight.
Sally, thank you. I'm just expanding my screen so I can see
There we go.
everyone. Questions, council members or staff have for Sally Clark, council member Langle, and then council member Naplin.
I just wondered, UW just went through a pretty serious master plan. And I wondered if there was any consideration, given that there is land in that area, was there any consideration to possibly addressing some of the facility needs at the near to the UW hospital, quite frankly.
At the UW Medicine campus on Montlake. Yeah.
I mean, those hospitals need renovation too. I acknowledge that because I know that's true, but there are land opportunities there that might be able to get some of the medical services. I'll just throw out one as an example of the behavioral health might be, since that's proposed as a newer type facility. I just wondered to what degree this was considered part of the master plan.
Yeah, it's a good, and I want to thank you for being the person who raises the land use planning questions, because that does not come as a surprise from you. So a couple of answers to that. One is at the high level, these three campuses are connected in terms of how the personnel work, in terms of how the doctors and the nurses and the researchers move among the three campuses now between Harborview, UW Medicine Montlake, and UW Medicine Northwest. UW Medicine Montlake does have plans for redevelopment of some of the pieces, particularly, although it's a very difficult nut to crack, that S1 parking garage that's in the South Campus area. We have to figure out how to use that space better. And so the campus master plan for the Seattle campus that was approved by the City Council in early 2019 envisions UW research and medicine and nursing redevelopment and better integration. Over time, the idea is to take down and reconfigure that entire Magnuson building, the entire stretch on Pacific there. And so it doesn't sound possible, but the spaces that UW Medicine is envisioning at Montlake really are kind of called for. They're kind of in that master plan. The predictions that they have over the next 20 to 30 years take that up, and they go a little bit more vertical in order to create open spaces to get to and from the water in the way that it's totally blocked off now. And so the Harborview campus has its own master plan. And I know that there has been some thinking about how do you move particular uses to the most rational place, but the demands for space and the square footage predictions are kind of the same. And it does mean that you could move elements, but the Harborview campus will have to have an update of its own master plan if the voters say yes, because there's really just not enough space left in the existing master plan. It's a 1999, if I'm not mistaken, was the last, was the last master plan there. And so it'll take a couple of years to go through the city process if the voters say yes.
Thanks.
Councilmember Naplin.
Thank you for that presentation. I just wanted to share a personal story that my son spent the night in the Burn Center. I spent the night as well, and we received excellent care. And I think, you came out to Duval, and people might think, what does Harborview have to do with Duval? And
I just can't say enough about the care that we received there. And I was so thankful that the first place we were taken to did not have the training or the capability to take care of my son. And we just were unbelievably grateful. So for all the people in Duval that think, what does Harborview have to do with, Mimi? I live in Duval. You might need it, and you'll be thankful it's there. And I did notice there were a few moments when we were, being transferred in the emergency room where I wasn't sure if I was going to have to pick up my little one and go seek safety due to some mental health situations of other patients. So I don't know if that's part of the plan, that there would be an ability to handle that in the emergency room, but if that is in the plan, that would be fantastic, because there were a few moments where I was a little scared.
Yeah, no, you bring up, I think first, I'm glad that Harborview was able to provide that level of care. And that's the number of people who I've talked to, particularly in this campaign period, who have a personal story to tell about Harborview it's very moving. And for anybody who's had the car crash or has had a loved one, firearms, things like that, Harborview ends up being a critical part of their life story after that. We've got a great story about the guy who runs the big time brewery in the U District, but we'll leave that for another time. Expansion of the emergency department hopefully helps at least spread those things out so that there can be just some more space to have there be some different areas. And especially for a pediatric visit, I think they want to be able to have there be better separation and have there be some buffers there, because it is, again, it's where folks are brought when they are found on the street. It is where folks come when they have suffered a trauma on the street. And that can be hard, very hard. So I'm glad you were brought there, and I know exactly what you're talking about in terms of encountering, especially when you're experiencing a trauma and then encountering something that is complicating that.
Other questions from council or staff? I don't see additional hands, Sally. I do want to just thank you again personally on behalf of council and our city. I know Airlift Northwest, both with their rotary wing, the helicopter, as well as their airplanes, provide service way beyond King County. But for City of Duval, there's been many times we've had Airlift Northwest fly patients just to speed up that ground time and get them there to the hospital. And so I know we have citizens here that benefit from the Level 1 Trauma Center. Thank you. Jody, our city clerk, Jody Wyckoff, could you open up for our citizens? I believe we still have 2 attendees. I just want to ask if any of them have a opposing opinion here regarding the ballot, and see if they want to say anything.
I have given them the opportunity to unmute themselves. So if either of the 2 attendees would like to unmute and give an opposing view, you may do so now.
Good evening. This is Gerald Spurdy. I'm here on behalf of the Duval Chamber of Commerce, and I'm just listening in. So I appreciate everybody's input. Thanks.
Great. Gerald, thank you for that. I see Cynthia is still on mute. It doesn't appear that we have any opposing opinions on this. Sally, thank you again. Appreciate you bringing this to our attention, being factual about the data and information so people can make a good decision. And I just want to encourage all of our citizens in the region to get out and vote here. A lot of important issues. And thank you. And we hope that you have a good evening and a good week.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for your service. Really.
Okay. Sally,
take
thank
care.
you.
All right. Till next time.
Well, good night. We have 3 additional items, and I'm not a great mathematician, but it's 6:40. Practically, we have just a little less than 15 minutes. Mayor always appreciates it when I mismanage our cow and we pass things on to her to handle, hopefully getting us out before 11:30 at night. Our next item is Public Works. This is a Duval Design Standards. The presentation tonight, I believe, is from Steve Liniszewski. And Steve, I'll turn it over to you. Do you think you can you work this and Larissa work it out in the next 15 minutes?
We'll always do our best. So I will turn it over to Larissa. You guys hear me enough. So she's been working on this. She's the champion of our Public Works in action. So
great. Well, welcome, Larissa. We'll turn it over to you.
Hi, good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Council, staff, and any citizens that may be still listening. I was supposed to talk about the Duval Public Works Design Standards update a couple months ago, but I went on maternity leave early. So Steve, I think, gave a written report. And so nothing's really changed. I'm just giving kind of another update, and then hopefully I can move through it quickly and see if anyone has any questions. So I'm gonna try and share my screen. Did it work? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So let's see. And does it want to go advance? Is it advancing? Great. Okay. So this is the first time I've shared a PowerPoint on a virtual meeting, so forgive me. So really quick, Public Works Design Standards, updating, there's a utility development extension agreement that I'll talk about in the next couple of slides. That is an update to the standards. Mostly it was a document cleanup, so a lot of organization and formatting and really minor editing to the manual itself, which is chapters 1 through 5. And then same thing with the appendix and our details. I'll talk a little bit about the timeline. So this is a picture of our paper version of our standards, and it's also electronically available online. We adopt by ordinance. So mostly it's just to keep both developers and private parties and the city's projects held to the same street and utility design standards. So our manual is 5 chapters: general, water, roads, storm, and sewer. Currently, the version is about 228 pages. The updated version is less, it's 157, but that's mostly due to formatting. There was no deleting of anything. It was moving things around to kind of consolidate information in one place and not have it kind of piecemeal throughout all of the chapters. So there's vacancies now in the chapters. If you see them, that's what they're for. Biggest change again is the utility developer extension agreement, minor changes. And then we're hoping to add that some of these minor changes and edits and, you know, errors and small changes, nothing that is substantive, can be approved administratively in the future, and we don't have to go through a whole ordinance process. So this developer extension agreement is for all utilities. We did have a section that was in the standards chapter 1 that was just talking about utility extension. This just adds a sentence talking about this agreement, which it was previously attorney reviewed. It's about 29 pages, and it's contractual with the developer to kind of streamline a process that we have in Public Works already that's not very well outlined right now. So the attempt is to clean that process up. It's similar to a permit process. Design review and inspections are all in one place and under one agreement, so there's no surprises. We can hopefully hold developers accountable for certain improvements. We can do just sewer, we can do just water, or we could do just storm, or it could be a whole plat extension. And it satisfies DOH construction form requirements for the water system as well. And then our appendix, it has a whole bunch of forms in it. There's applications, checklists for final plat, for example. There's our bond forms, bills of sale, general notes for construction, water main installing, and those types of things. It's currently 98 pages, and the updated version makes it a little bit longer, but that's just because we kind of tried to flesh out and add some checklists that weren't housed in the appendix before. So I wanted to try and get everything that we used in one place. And again, really minor organization, formatting edits, nothing significant. And then we have our details, which is a little bit of a heavier lift because it's CAD. Work is ongoing on that. We're not done yet. We're kind of, in a way, just getting started. So there's 116 pages currently. Each page is really either a vacancy or a standard detail. Water has 16. You can see the road sections have 42, and that's a whole bunch of different things, but they all have to do with the right of way and road driveway cuts and those types of things. And then drainage 27, sewers 17 details. And this is an example of a PRV station. Lots of things go into them. And our roadway cross sections really need to be updated. And then there's questions about, do we want to include requirements for street trees and landscape strips as well in these details? They don't currently talk about those parts of right-of-way improvements, but they could. And again, details just organizing. There's some things in water that don't necessarily belong in water as a detail. So it's just organization, putting details where they should go. And then some of the older details that we're going to bring back, like meter setters, for example. We have plastic meters now, and so meter setters really help to avoid breaking of meters. So we want to bring that detail back. And utility trench cross sections and stuff like that. So timeline, kind of briefly, the chapters are done for updated sections. The appendices are done. Details are in work. And so review by council for adoption is kind of the next step. And I think that I gave a link for the utility extension agreement in the last written report, but I don't think we gave a link for the updated standards. So we can surely get that out to everybody when the time arises. And then questions. Really fast. I tried to go fast.
Thank you, Larissa. I'm just expanding my screen so I can see everyone. Councilmember Naplin.
Super quick, you had mentioned street trees, landscape strips. I think we have some code already in the landscape design standards. So just maybe in the future, some information on how that might work together, any suggestions that might come out of planning of what they've seen could be improved or how that might coordinate, that would be great.
Other council members? Councilmember Iyer.
Thank you so much for this work. This is such an important document and helps everything work and brings everything together, and just doing it, getting it done right is just helps everything turn out better in the end. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Other council members or staff with questions? Well, Larissa, I really enjoy engineer presentations. They're very precise and directed and very well done. Do we, on the roads, I have a question. On our streets, do we have a different design for neighborhoods versus cross city corridors, or is it pretty much one design? I know that it's project by project, but it just seems to me we have some awfully narrow cross city corridors. Most of them have been updated and widened. Certainly Third is probably an example of kind of a hodgepodge of different types of designs that someday will get straightened out. But are those separate? Are there two different designs?
So that is a great question. We do have, there's a road classification for all of the streets in the city, and they range from arterial, collector arterial, then you have neighborhoods and so on. So they kind of go from the biggest roads that handle the most trips to the smaller roads that are neighborhoods. And they pretty much all have the same standard. But right-of-way widths vary, and within that means that pavement widths vary. Some of the lower classification roads, they only require parking one side, or there's no parking required, and things like that. So for the most part, they're all built to the same standard, but based on the classification, those kind of widths and dimensions change. So I hope that kind of answers your question.
It does. I think especially for arterials, it's important that, we have considered the bike lanes and other things that people enjoy for safety reasons. Certainly we have heard with citizen input how important it is to have lighting and sidewalks. And I think we've done a really good job on those. Well, Larissa, thank you. It looks like we have another question from Councilmember Naplin.
Yes.
I'm taking two turns. I'm sorry. You brought up something that it just came up. At one point, we had talked about the size of the parking spot. Maybe Steve remembers. There's the roadside parking spots that looked a little too small for most vehicles to squeeze into, and wasn't sure if that is something that's addressed in here. And then also just my observation, I was driving with my daughter. She's learning how to drive, and we were just tooling around, and we went down into the new Duval Village. That road is extraordinarily narrow with no parking. And to be honest with you, we got down to the end of one of those roads and we almost could not turn around. I mean, I don't even know what's going to happen, but I wanted to bring that up, that perhaps if the current design standards allow that could be something we might want to look at.
And that is a very good comment type question. Duval Village is a little bit special in the fact that most all of the pavement width is travel lane, and there is no on-street parking, especially when you get down into the lobe. So right off of that roundabout, you can see that there's curb extensions, and those kind of delineate the on-street parking that would be allowed. And then as you get around where the driveways are going to be, because they're actually larger buildings, and so the driveway density is extremely high, you can't park on the street anyway, because you literally be parking in front of someone's driveway. So that's kind of a special circumstance, and they have engineering variances and code departures and those types of things to kind of get those road sections the way that they are. I know that some of the track roads, we have standards for track roads too. Number units served, you're supposed to have a half a unit parking stall per dwelling. And so we try to hold strictly to those. Duval Village does have a couple pull out little parking stall areas that tried to handle some of the on-street parking requirements. And so it does get kind of creative to be able to work with the narrower roads and the higher driveway densities. But the road narrowing is intended to slow people down. I know it doesn't, sometimes it doesn't seem to make sense intuitively, but it does. That the intent is for our brains to slow down because the curbs and everything gets narrower. So, yes.
So I think what I'm saying then, if they have to be narrow, there needs to be more parking or places for vehicles to turn around. Because honestly, even though no one was parked there and no one is living there, and it was wide open for me to try to maneuver in that little pull-out parking area, we barely could get turned around and back out of there. Now, granted, I had a new driver, but it was tight. And so anyway, I don't know if there's any anything in the code that is allowing that kind of thing that maybe we should contemplate, because I do think that's could become pretty problematic. Those are lots of bedroom units that I doubt is only going to have one car each.
Yes.
Well, thank you everyone for the questions. We're down to 5 minutes. I want to give you a break, so we'll end the meeting here. Larissa and Director Laniszewski, thank you for the presentation. Mayor, while everybody else leaves to take a break, I just wanted to chat with you about these last two items. If you want to move those to council or you want to move them to the next special budget workshop. I think I've got you on mute still. Everyone else is welcome to take a break here if you like. Thank you, everybody.